So let me explain real quickly a little bit about who I am, what I do, and then let me hope that the presentation is on my computer after that. My name is Rami Ismail. I'm an independent game developer. I've been doing this for about 15 years. My first indie game was called Super Crate Box, which released in 2010. We were Devolver Digital's first ever indie game. I've been around since before the App Store was really a thing. I started in Flash, just to age myself a little bit. I think the most important thing about talks that you should know about me is I firmly believe that anybody on a stage sounds smarter than they actually are. And I want you to keep in mind that that's not necessarily true. So anything I'm going to tell you today is not because that is true, it's because I believe it to be true. It might also be true for you. It might also not be true for you. So for today, the presentation is going to be a little different. I don't really like giving talks where I just kind of guess what you need me to talk about. And I can talk about a lot of stuff. I can talk about anything except for two subjects. I can't draw for shit, so please do not ask about art. Also, I can't make music, so don't ask about music. If you have questions about game design, marketing, business, you have questions about creative direction, about production, if you have questions about programming, I can also do some programming. But the way this presentation is going to work is fairly straightforward, and I really hope the internet starts working, because otherwise I'm going to have to keep talking forever. Action needed. Open browser. I have 10 empty slides for you. There's nothing on them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to help me design the 10 empty slides. So you're going to put the text on them, and then we're going to use that text, and I'm going to go back to the start, and I'm just going to give that presentation. So I'm just going to improvise the hell out of it. Luckily, I've been doing this long enough that I think I can give you a good talk with that one. If the internet, so fuck it, I'll just start a new presentation, whatever. What am I talking about? We're talking about 10 empty slides. Why am I waiting for that to download? Can I get screen on? My screen, not whoever's screen. Whose screen was that? What? Is there anybody else here? Starting Microsoft PowerPoint. There we go. Blanco. All right. So, tell me, what do you want me to talk about? Give me a subject, a question, something you're wondering about. Yeah, go ahead. All right. So really what you're worrying about is about the balance between creativity and sort of commercial targets, right?
Actually about how marketing or how these marketing techniques kind of destroy the fun of the player and engage the player in a not...
Right, that's a statement. I can agree with that statement.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you do not agree with this statement.
I can or I cannot, but like, is there a question that I could answer for you?
Okay. How can we do, if we believe in this statement, how can we deal with this market and try to release games that do not fall into this in-purchases category,
right?
Like free-to-play category?
Yeah, okay. So that is really about balancing sort of like creativity with commercial. Okay. Next one. Anybody else? Who has something for me? Yeah, go for it.
Maybe how to stick out when there are like tens of thousands of games are released every year, and yeah.
How to stand out if you've made the mistake of making video games. All right, cool. Good. Anybody else? It's going to be a very short presentation if we end up with 2 slides. Yeah, there we go.
I wanted to ask about how to balance designing for other people and telling your own story.
All right. So this is really kind of a question about sincerity, isn't it? Like how genuine. Okay, sincerity. I love that. I love that. That's a great one. Okay. I will learn how to type, I swear. It's also like, this is the rickety, like they gave me a choice between a table or this thing. And the table would have been so much smarter because my laptop is balancing on like a piece of wood this thick. So I'm very careful, so the typing is one-handed weird. Okay, number 4. Over there in the back.
Well, I'm scared of AI, and I wonder if AI is a threat for indie game developers.
All right. Cool. Number 5. Anybody else?
Hi, other side in the back. I was wondering if you have any tips how to form a coherent team and create a positive company culture.
Okay, for whoever wants to follow that up, no pressure. Anybody? Did you scare everybody with too good of a question? Anybody left? All right, go.
So what's new in 2024 as indie game developer? What changed from the past?
Okay. All right. Changes in the games industry. Okay. Cool. Another one here in the front.
How do we get back the energy we had 10 years ago?
Okay. Number 8.
Okay. How is gonna wait? How is the game developing gonna look in the future with all the crises in the world?
You know what? I think I'm going to fold that into the sincerity one. Is that okay? I think
okay.
I think I can answer that question in there. If I forget it on that slide, just yell at me. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Cool. Just pretend it's Twitter.
I'm gonna scream.
Anybody? I see 2 questions there. Let's do 2 more, then we'll just get started.
How do I sell myself better?
Okay. Yeah. Where something went wrong that might make PowerPoint unstable. Please save your presentation and restart. I copy-pasted a slide, y'all. It actually, did it? Oh no, it's still working. I love error messages that say things are going to hell and then it works. These are my favorite. Okay, we have one more? Yeah, here at the front?
Maybe on how to handle player friction, because in older games there's a lot more player friction in the things you're doing, and right now it's more polished. And I'm wondering if that.
Oh yeah,
changed.
okay. Yeah, you know what? Evolution of expectations regarding friction. That sounds so fancy when you say it like that. All right, you know what? Let's do 10. Is there a 10? I have a 10. If I promised y'all 10 empty slides, you're getting.
How to market your indie game?
You know what? I think that fits in with the how to stand out. I'll make it work there. Over there?
I'm releasing my first game. What are the things I will definitely forget because I haven't done this before?
Cool. Awesome. Let's do a presentation. Hi, my name is Rami Ismail. I'm an independent game developer. I've been doing this for about 15 years. We were Devolver Digital's first published game. I made games about explosions. They include games about crates with explosions, airplanes with explosions. I did games about mutants with explosions. I also did a game about fishing with explosions. And today I have a very well-prepared presentation that I would like to give for you. This one was an interesting one because I think at the heart of game development, one of the weirdest frictions we have is making games is fucking expensive. It's not cheap. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a team. Some people can do it solo, most people do not. And that balance of like, how do we make sure that we fit in the market and we can actually make money with what we're doing is really at odds with what can we do if we had all the time, right? And so for me, one of the core things in any game development production is to make sure that you split up the creative and business responsibilities. So some teams kind of do both. And I find that one of the hardest switches mentally to make out of all the switches you can possibly be making. So in teams, I normally recommend have a creative director whose job it is to focus on the creative part of the game, like the quality of the game, how good is the game, how interesting the game. They protect the vision of the game, the heart of the game. And then have a producer whose job really it is to just ship the game. And I prefer if my producer doesn't care too much about the quality of the game. I want them to sort of like check whether we hit the baseline. But beyond that, I want them to trust me as creative director, right? And if I'm a producer, I also just say like, listen, we have 3 weeks, you have 3 weeks. I need you to figure out how we can do in 3 weeks what you want. But I think you only have time for 2 out of the 5 things you want to do, right? And they might argue, well, then the game won't be good. And I'm like, that's great, but in 3 weeks, we're out of money. So pick a thing, right? If you separate those responsibilities, and this is a very generalized example, but if you separate those responsibilities and these 2 people respect each other, and they can argue with each other, and they can talk with each other, you end up at sort of like the cutting edge between what we can do and what we want to do. You'll find sort of like the optimum balance, right? So for me, one of the biggest questions about this is, for example, free-to-play. Free-to-play is not inherently evil, right? There are ways of doing that model that aren't terrible. I play Slice and Dice at the moment. That's a free game. Love that game. Great game. Has a single unlock, sure, but like it is technically free-to-play, right? That is a valid use of the free-to-play model. There are games where the free-to-play model fits very naturally. I'm also a big Destiny player. I think they went a little too far, perhaps. But in essence, I'm okay with playing Destiny and buying a stupid skin every now and then. I'm okay with that. I like the game. And if they make me a Mass Effect outfit, I will spend $15 on a Mass Effect outfit that I'm never going to wear. I'm just happy I get to support them and they made something I like. So I think the biggest answer to your question from my perspective is always make sure that these interests are separated in your company. That it's not just you trying to do creative decisions with business in mind, but to do creative decisions and have somebody who makes sure that you fit a business case, right? In mobile, I will say the market there is warped to a degree towards free-to-play, that really releasing anything that's paid will work against you almost always. So if you can do something like Slice and Dice, where effectively it's the old shareware model, you download the game for free. If you enjoy it, buy the rest of it for $3.99, $6.99, $9.99. That tends to work very well. But when it comes to sort of like more general, balancing your creativity and your creative commercial interest, just separate them. Have 2 people, have them respect each other, have them argue. And now, okay, you fucked up and you're a game developer, like all of us. Also, you're spending your Friday afternoon in a sweaty little room with like rotating, I guess. It's cool. That's some cool shit. Listen, one of the hardest things in game development genuinely is to stand out. What is the average number of Steam games released per day at the moment? Like 86, I think was the last number. Standing out is really hard. I found a few things to be generally true about standing out. One, we suck at market research. If you're an independent developer, you're not going to do a good job of this, right? You can look at what the market is, but if we take a quick mental exercise, let me grab my phone. So how long does it take to make a game? How many years? 2-ish? Let's take 2, right? Let's see. I want you to help me play a little game. If I say the game of the year winner for a specific year was It Takes Two. 2 years later, what is the game of the year? Based on that information. It Takes Two was the best-selling game of the year. That's clearly what people want, right? They want, like, social experiences, they can play together, cute little story, that kind of thing, right? So what's the game of the year 2 years later? Baldur's Gate. It's Baldur's Gate 3. The Last of Us Part 2. 2 years later, what was the game of the year? It was Elden Ring. Let's see. let's try one more just for fun. Ah, yes, this is the good stuff. Oh, that one won? I didn't know that one won. Nice. Let's say The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Game of the Year 2 years later. Sorry? It was Sekiro or God of War. I might have skipped to it past two. Sekiro, apparently. It has nothing to do with each other. The whole thing is bullshit, right? You can't look at the market now and then predict what's going to be the thing 2 years later. Who had expected that we would be talking with any reference about a game about stamping passports? Or a game with the, like, honestly, like, no disrespect, but the terrible art direction, but there's a lot of things to kill vampire survivors. That's an ugly ass game, but it's fucking fun. Right? Nobody would argue that, because that's just what it is. So pretending that we can figure out what the market wants 2 years in advance is bullshit. Even the large companies miss on this all the time. You know which game really should have worked? Concord. Really should have worked. Heroes, colorful, multiplayer, like hit every box, games as a service. That game should have landed. But it didn't. So here's the one thing I can tell you. You don't start to stand out in marketing. You start to stand out when you pick the game you want to make. When you pick the game you want to make, the one thing I can tell you is please don't try to make something that is going to be popular. Make something you give a shit about. Right? Oh, that's such a good transition. Very proud of that. Very proud of that one. But you got to make something that you give a shit about. And now here's the thing. As an independent developer, there are a million kind of games that you could be making, right? The best tip I've always had for any game developer is make a game you give a shit about with one additional simple trick. If I play your game and I love your game, I really enjoy your game. And time passes. And now it's 5 years later. It's imagine 2029. We can't imagine 20, like we don't know what the world's going to look like in 20. We might all be dead in 2029. We don't know. Imagine we make it to 2029, okay? And I'm sitting with a friend, and I'm going, oh my God, like, I don't know, like half a decade ago, I was playing this game. It was what is the genre of your game? Where you, something, something. If that person were to type that sentence into Google, if Google still exists at that time, would they find your game? So I made a fishing game about fishing with machine guns, toasters, and explosives. Does anybody want to bet what the chances are of that still being the top result for that game? I can guarantee you it still is. I made a sepia game about World War II super weapons where you fly a super airplane. I guarantee you that's still the same game. Whatever that sentence is for your game, if you can do that in one sentence, you have a much better chance. So the two things, and I'm kind of pulling these together right now, is make a thing you give a shit about, because you already know that's unique. You're unique. You're you. There's nobody like you. The worst thing you can do is look at games and go like, oh, you know what we need to make? A roguelike about skateboarding and a dog. Which all of those would make a lot of sense. Stray was a big thing, that was a cat, so let's not do cats, we'll do a dog. Skateboarding is hot, but kind of not. Nobody's making skateboarding games, but also there's 3 skateboarding games coming out. You probably add zombies as well if you look at the market, right? So just don't. Just make cool shit, right? And then by osmosis, what's interesting in the market will just kind of go into your game. That also means that AI is a threat and it's not a threat, right? So let me tell you what I believe about AI, and there's going to be a little bit of politics in here, for which my apologies. But the short version of AI is actually fairly simple. AI can't do what we do. The problem isn't AI, the problem is that rich people believe that it can. That's it. The problem isn't that AI can replace us. But as long as rich people believe it can, they're going to fire us. And you know the biggest problem with that? The biggest problem with that is not even that. The biggest problem is that we've made this mistake before. About 10 years ago in the industry, juniors were seen as disposable. Junior will come in, we burn them the fuck out, but we got 2 years of good work out of them, yalla, next one. We had a lot of game schools. So there was always new talent. And so only a very small percentage of those people actually stayed in the games industry. You know what happened 6, 7 years later? We had no seniors. Because who the fuck was going to become a senior if we burn out all the juniors? And so now the conversation is, you know what we can do? We can replace all the juniors with AI. So what the hell is going to happen 7 years from now, when none of the juniors got the basic skills to figure out how composition works in games, how color works in games? Nobody made the mistakes that you do when you just get into 3D. Nobody made the mistakes when you're trying to program really simple shit with a programmer sitting over your shoulder going, that's wrong, that's right, that's wrong. So for me, AI in itself, I think it's awesome. It's weird. I wish we could find a way to not have it burn down entire forests to make me a funny image with Homer Simpson in it. So until we fix that, I'm not very into it. You know, it's cool, I guess. But I have a local model on my computer. And I run that, and that's fucking fun. I have a great time with it. It does funny things, it does stupid things, it does unexpected things. I think as a field of research, it's super interesting. Mixing it with hypercapitalism at the moment, yeah, I'm not too excited about that one. Like, I hope we do better than that. And how do we survive? Well, like I said, inshallah, it depends on whether the rich people figure out quick enough that it's really fucking expensive and that it doesn't actually do the job. And otherwise, 6, 7 years from now, we're going to be sitting here going like, how do we train people to be seniors in 3 months? With AI. Fuck. So, let's go. Oh no. Are you an executive? Okay. There's so much confidence in that one. So how to form a coherent team and culture? Culture is unique to your studio. Every studio has its own culture, and it starts with the people. I always believe that whatever game you make, you always start from people. Because before you have a name, before you have a game, before you have a group of people, and those people have a history, they have a background. And culture is very different. I've worked with teams that are all very soft people. I've worked with teams that are all very loud people. I've worked with teams that have both of those groups of people, right? The most important part is that if I had to summarize culture into one really quick sentence there, well, 2. Let me do 2 statements. The first one is the top priority in any team is safety. That's it. And I don't just mean safety as in physical safety, I mean emotional safety, I mean intellectual safety. I mean that there needs to be processes that people can trust, that they can use to surface problems, thoughts, ideas, anything like that. The more varied that group of people is, and the more safe they feel, the more perspective you get, the better the game is that you're going to make. And this is not just true for games. I'm an amateur pilot. I fly airplanes. And one of the first things we get taught in the cockpit is even if the people next to you doesn't know how the fuck an airplane works, tell them, if you see something that looks weird, tell me. And the reason we say that explicitly, we tell them, if you see anything weird, tell me, is because in history, we found that when that doesn't happen, people die. Because the person next to you sees that your wing is on fire, and they look at you and they go like, he probably knows. He's a pilot. And you don't, then you die. And this is not just true for somebody who doesn't fly an airplane. We even realized that if you have 2 trained pilots, but one of them feels the other one shuts down their suggestions, they will not mention that the fuel meter just went out. They will not say, hey, that is not the runway, that's a building. They will leave very obvious things because they don't feel safe mentioning those things. And if you read any disaster game, if you read the background story, it always comes down to the same thing. Everybody knew it was going wrong. People have said it. It came up in meetings. This was known 2 years ago. Leadership didn't react to it. People didn't feel comfortable about it. And sure, even if everything goes right, you might make a shit game. It's the reality of game development. We're a creative field. Sometimes we swing, we miss. But at heart of everything is the only thing I can guarantee you for your culture is that if you make sure that you research how to create a safe culture where people can speak up, where people can be creative, where people can mention problems, that you will make a better game studio. The second one, culture is fragile. You can have a team where 97% of all people work really well together. And if you get the one fucking asshole that will sit in a meeting, and every time this one person speaks, they speak over them, your team will notice. And they will feel less safe. And then that person becomes more vocal because the other person isn't speaking anymore. And now it starts to unravel. So anything that damages your culture is something you should deal with, not as soon as you can, but as soon as possible. Immediately. If you see it, start fixing it. Have a meeting with that person. Talk to them. Fix it. Because again, that touches safety. The other thing that really gets in the way of culture is growth. If you have a studio and you're like 4 people and you've worked together for 10 years and you bring in a 5th person, how do you integrate that person into that culture? But what if you're 4 people and you're growing to 10? Now the majority of the team does not have that culture. They might have 6 individual cultures. And if you're not managing that carefully, that can go to hell. So culture is one of those things that is weird because it's both entirely automatic and a lot of work. And so managing your culture comes down to managing safety. That's it. Focus on that, read some books on it, read some research on it. This is not complicated stuff, but it does require you to be thoughtful, to be empathetic, and to listen. So currently we're kind of fucked. The industry is in a rough spot, right? And the industry is in a rough spot in many ways. One of the ones is money is expensive, investment is hard. There's a lot of games, more games than ever before. There's not as many publishers. Publishers are all a little bit risk averse. The one thing I can tell you about games is that more than ever, being able to make something that is different from what anybody else is making and testing it quickly are your 2 biggest superpowers. For years, there was the ability to work on something for 6, 7 years, then get some funding and get it out. Right now, that's insanity. Unless you're rich. If you're not rich, the best tip I have for you with how the industry is currently evolving is try to make shorter projects that are weirder and test them quickly. The games that are getting funded right now are not like, hey, we're doing a roguelike. So fucking what? So is everybody else. In fact, I would say that a lot of the things that we have been using as genres are actually morphing into mechanics. Roguelike is not a genre anymore. Roguelike is a mechanic. Merging things isn't a genre anymore. It's a mechanic. A lot of the things that we've seen as genres are morphing into parts of a game that on themselves are about as interesting as saying you can jump. Okay, cool. So if you want to make a game right now, build it, test it quickly. Mock-ups for art, quickly. Mock-ups for sound, quickly. Do it on paper, do it on computer, I don't care, whatever is fast. Start talking to publishers as soon as possible. And when it comes to publishers will still want to tell you that you should take your time to write the perfect email, do the perfect pitch deck, go to them with a vertical slash fuck them. Here's the thing, there's 270 publishers. Go online, search for Alan Dang, list of game dev resources. It's a list of about 270 publishers on there. Here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna make a prototype of your game. You're gonna spend 2 weeks, a month and a half on that. You're gonna go to that list, you're gonna make some mock-ups, you're gonna make some mock-ups of the art, you're gonna take some screenshots of your prototype, you're gonna have an artist paint them over so that it looks like how it's gonna look in the end. You're gonna send that to all of those publishers, not with a pitch. You're just gonna say like, hi, we are XYZ. We're working on a game right now. We think it's interesting. We'll keep you up to date on development. If you get people emailing you back with like, yes, please do, great. If nobody emails you that, next project. You just kill it because you've only been 2, 3, 4 weeks in, right? When you get to your vertical slice, when you get to the point where you can actually do a full thing of your game, a full demo of your game, that's when most publishers will be interested in funding you unless you've already shipped a few commercial titles. So you have to get to that vertical slice, one level of the game, high art, high music, high sound, high like playability. You have tried your mechanics, they work. That's where most publishers will fund you, but that doesn't mean that's the first time you can talk to publishers. So when it comes to publishers, when it comes to changing the games industry, right now games is really fucking risky. Let the publishers take the risk. They can invest, they have money, they can do that. Make things, try whether they work, validate them quickly, start talking about it. If there's interest, do more. If there's no interest, think about if this is worth 2 years of your life. I'm 36, a game takes 2 years. I have 15 games left in me. Then I'm done. I'm not gonna waste 2 of my years on shit that I don't think is interesting. So make something interesting, test it quickly, get play testers in quickly, send it to publishers, get a feeling if it's gonna work, and then continue. That's the way we survive what the industry is right now. We don't age backwards. We get more tired, we get more grumpy, we get a little bit more frustrated, and we lose a little nuance. And the best thing I've found to age backwards in the games industry genuinely is the same thing I've been saying for most of this presentation. Make shit you care about. This industry is not a fun industry. It's a hard industry. It's hard work. The only reason any of us in this room are sitting is because we give a shit. Why the fuck else would you be here? You're not gonna get rich. You're not gonna have good work-life balance unless you really try and work for it, right? You're not gonna be in an industry where you make something and everybody says, oh my God, thank you. What they'll say is, fuck you, the gun is balanced wrong, right? So this is our job. We chose this. We chose this because we care. So every now and then, make sure you take a moment and play that game that made you care. Go, like, hang out with friends and talk about what you're working on. Play test your game. Like, do things that give you joy. Because otherwise, this industry gets really tiring. I'm out of time. So I'm going to try and go really, really fast with what we have, okay? Is that okay for the organization? Is the organization? There's no organization? Oh, fuck it, I'll go then. Salespersonship, how do you sell? I think the most important thing about selling yourself or selling anything, I have to wrap up? Oh, I can go? Oh, subhanAllah. Awesome. The most important thing about selling is to think about what is value. What am I offering, right? So, you're you. That's fairly unique, but that's not good enough, right? I need to understand what that means, what's special about what you're doing, what's standing out about what you're doing. And I think the best thing I've learned, maybe as an Egyptian kid learning to haggle, is that salesmanship is not about telling people that you have something to sell. It's about letting them know why it's worth their time and money, right? It's not just about being good at something. It's about being good at something that can help them. So think about things as sort of a win-win situation. When you're talking to a publisher, you're not talking about them like doing you the favor of publishing. No, fuck no, they need that video game. They need a video game because if they don't have video games, they're going to die as a publisher. So salesmanship for a pitch is effectively saying, here's a good game, I think it fits your audience, I think it's going to sell more money than you're going to invest in it. Actually, I think if we work together, you have a great audience that you could market this game to easily, and I have a great game, right? And so the same thing, if you're doing a resume, you can do a programming resume and put a whole bunch of fucking code on there, but I don't give a shit. Because what's really easy to find in the games industry is a programmer. I find hundreds of programmers. Yeah, if I put a call on LinkedIn right now, I'll have 500 in my mailbox before the end of the day. You know what I need? I need a programmer who can communicate. I need somebody who will think along and tell us, hey, listen, here's what I can do. So you know what? If I'm looking for a prototyper, you know what I want? Game jams. I want you to show me, this is a curious idea I had. I worked on it for 2 days. This is the code is bad, but it works. Because that's what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for somebody who's going to implement some stuff, I want some really clean code. And I want to understand why you structured it that way. If you worked in a team, I want to know what your role in that team was, how the communication was set up. So you can have a portfolio that has all these 3 things, but now I don't know what you want to do. So you want to balance it towards one or the other, right? So all of this is just an exercise in what do you need? How can I communicate that? That's salesmanship. That's the whole thing about it. When I was selling computers in my old job, I worked at MediaMarkt. I was a computer salesman. The one thing they always taught us is the first thing you want to do if you're going to sell something is understand what they want to buy. If you figure out what they want to buy, you make your story so that whatever it is that you're trying to sell is the answer to their question. And I can guarantee you, whatever their question was, they didn't need a copy of Microsoft Office and Norton Antivirus. Every time, doesn't matter what they need that shit. But that's salespersonship. It's just that. If you want to practice, honestly, the best way of practicing it is just with friends. Just talk to friends and say, okay, imagine this is what you need. Let me try and convince you, right? You can also go for training for this. There are trainings for this. There are people that practice this kind of thing. Or go sell some computers at MediaMarkt. It worked for me. Friction is an interesting one because I've been thinking a lot about it. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to move fast. But I think players' expectation of friction is shifting from enjoying figuring things out to wanting to be told how things are going to work. So, you know, if you had a roguelike kind of game back in the days, you would just kind of go like, here's 100 abilities, fucking try them. Oops, you blew yourself up. Well, don't use that one, I guess. Nowadays, every roguelite has like, you have an ability and it goes like, if you use this, you will do 14 damage to all units in the 6 squares around you unless they have shield. And you will take 4 damage yourself if anybody has, right? So we've kind of shifted from friction being in understanding of the game towards friction being in actually executing the gameplay. This is a subtle shift, but it's a shift that I've started to notice, and it's getting quite prominent at this point. 2 things with that. The first one, that everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that you need to. But what it does mean is that people will expect it. So we're always working with the mental model of a player, right? So if you're making a racing game, if I'm making a racing game and I give you an Xbox controller and I say start driving, which button do we press? Yeah, R2, trigger. Anybody said A or X? Yeah, you're a Switch player? Yes. Okay. People have expectations, right, of how that works. If I gave you a racing game and accelerate was left stick backwards, how much would you hate me? About maximum, right? So here's the thing. People have expectations. If you're going to betray those expectations or subvert those expectations, you need to make it worth their while. You need to explain it. You need to explain how it works. You need to give them the time to play with it to get used to it, and then use that. So this is also true for friction. You can do crazy, oh, that's hard. You can do crazy stuff with friction, but if you're going to do it, you want to think about how a player is going to experience that. The only way you can do that is playtesting. So test it. You can theorize about this all day, but ultimately just putting it in front of a player and going like, they hate it. It's probably the best way of figuring out how to make them not hate it. Right? So if you're going to do something weird, test early, test a lot. Pretty much every way possible in general. But the things I will tell you about releasing your first game is whatever buffer you have near the end is too short. So if you're doing like, oh yeah, we'll upload the final build like a week in advance, make it 2, right? I don't know if you've done your QA, your localization, I don't know if your Steam page is ready. One of the most common phone calls I get is from teams that forgot to get a review on their Steam page. So when they hit their launch date, they just can't put the page live, right? That's a big one. Marketing, you want to make sure that your marketing is starting to go pretty much 3 months in advance. Now, I think for your game, I've already seen some marketing about it, so that's probably good. There's a few things you don't control, which is your competition on that day. If Rockstar decides, surprise, Grand Theft Auto 6, then I'm sorry. But it doesn't matter anymore. There was a really good example of Renee Gittins who released a game called Potions, A Curious Tale. She released it, and then 10 minutes later, EA decided to release every single backlog game they had over the past 15 years as separate games. So her game went from new and release to like, this is old news, and like that. And that was it. You know, that's the story. Really, when it comes to release management, it's a process. And as an indie, I think making sure your SKUs are set up, if they need certification, that they're through certification, giving yourselves 2 or 3 weeks of time between that moment and release, those are probably your best bets. If you're going to put a batch through, like a day 0, please don't, unless you have to, right? Because on a big studio, you can unfuck a lot of things. As an indie, you will probably just fuck it up worse. At least that's my experience. Maybe I just suck at it. I don't know. Make sure your press is set ready. If you're talking to press, use the phrase embargo if you want to stop them from talking about it earlier. Do not trust influencers. Not as in they're bad people, just only the biggest ones sort of give a shit about their reputation. There's actually sort of like a golden zone for influencers. The small ones don't give a shit because you send them a game early and this could be their big breakthrough. And the big ones are big enough that they don't have to give a shit. There's sort of like a golden zone of influencers that do give a shit and will keep to the rules. Everybody else you just don't know. So influencers I tend to do late. 3 days, 2 days in advance, so that even if they go early, it'll be fine. Most of the press you can trust, which is very much the opposite of what people will want you to believe on the internet. But if you send it to one of the major outlets and you say, listen, the embargo is this and this date, sometimes they fuck up, but it will really be an accident, right? They're not there to be like, we will fuck this tiny indie developer over by talking about their game 2 days. I think that just doesn't happen. The final thing, it is actually an interesting conversation you had earlier. Launching a game doesn't end at launch. So for the next 6 months to a year, you have opportunities with sales, you have opportunities with getting the baseline of your sales up, you have opportunities of making sure that your game will do well or continue to do well. The biggest fuck up I see in small studios is actually if their game is somewhat successful and they just try to keep milking it while it is on the decline, right? So don't spend too much time on a thing that isn't working. Start moving for your next thing, start setting up your next deal, start pitching your next thing. But your biggest fuck up will probably be if it's semi-successful. Okay? Awesome. That was 10 slides. I have 3 minutes for Q&A. All right. Cool. It's kind of weird to have a talk that is a Q&A and then go, I have 3.5 minutes for questions, but I do have 3.5 minutes for questions. So based on that, does anybody, I see a question in the back. Let's try and keep it like an auction. Let's keep it moving.
How do you manage players' expectation in terms of polishing? Because I noticed that they are really, really, they are really harsh with me.
Yeah.
When there are just the graphics are not AAA levels.
Right. So
polishing bugs. And
polishing games. Oh God, this moves. Polishing games. Again, like this is an expectation question. So. Vampire Survivors is not a pretty game, but it did really well, right? Like, so it is possible. It just means that you need to make sure that whatever your graphics are fit the expectation of what the players are doing. So, say you're making an RPG, the baseline for RPG is pretty high nowadays, right? Like, people want pretty RPGs. So if you're making a not pretty RPG, you need to have something that stands out about it that makes them go like, you know, I'll forgive it. When it comes to polish, one of the best rules I have is as soon as I hit production, I just tell my team every Friday, take a few hours and go polish some shit. Polish some UI, add some effects, like, you know, move the health bar should like have a nice chunky feel to it, like that kind of thing. So polish is very much a continuous thing. It's not a one-time thing. You kind of build it into your process and make it part of it. When it comes to art style, if you're saying, listen, I'm at the end of my project and I need to polish the art style, something fucked up at the start of the game. So you need to go back and figure out your decision-making when you committed to that art style. Because apparently it's not what players want. And that's a validation problem. You could have figured that out before you built the game. Since you're here right now, do the best you can, but also remember that that should generally not be a deal breaker for people if you can communicate the value beyond the art style. If art is not your strong point as a game, I'm assuming it's not the thing you didn't try to make a pretty game. You tried to make an interesting game and people are just revolting over the art. Try to make sure that they understand the value of the game itself, instead of focusing on the art or focusing on that, because you're not going to fix that unless you redo all the art. And like I was saying, your biggest fuck up will be trying to fix something that isn't working. You're at risk of that. So if you're going to try to touch the art, do it quick, see how it works, and then go on. Cool. Next question. In the back. Maximum distance. Just yell it. I will repeat your question.
So you've mentioned that we have to be afraid of AI and how it could potentially take our jobs, but you've also, I wanted to ask you, how can we use AI to our benefit without having, without stealing from somebody else's work and at the same time not having to say inshallah?
Yeah, so the main thing for me is I use a local model where I supply the data set, so I know my data sets are ethically sourced. If that's a problem to you, do the same as me. Get an ethically sourced data set and then use that on a local model. If you don't want to do those things, then just don't use AI. Like, it's nice, but it's not particularly, like, I've not found anything where I'm like, oh my God, that makes such a difference in my life. Like, AI now reads my emails to summarize them, but it's weird because I will write a sentence and then it will turn it into a polite email, and then on the other end is a person who has the polite email and then has AI turn it into a sentence, and I don't understand why I just sent the fucking sentence. Like, I'm very confused about the whole thing. But for now, it's not been a massive feature add to my life. I know in larger teams, again, that's when capitalism comes in and that's when it becomes a threat. So I think on a personal level, it's not really a threat if you manage what you want and what you want to do with it. On a large level, it's very inshallah level. Cool. Minus 16, I'm out of time. If you have any questions, find me on LinkedIn or since yesterday on Blue Sky, ramiismail.com. I also have a newsletter. If you want more information about creative direction, production, or marketing, find it at LTBF or just levelingtheplayingfield.ramiismail.com. I'll be standing outside of that door, so if you have any questions that you feel comfortable asking here, I'll be right there to answer some more. Thanks so much.